Welcome to the Up in Arms Museum. Today we have a special item here that we're going to actually demonstrate. This here is a pretty fancy box, and if you look on it, it has the initials of GBC. And this is an 1800s gambler's kit. The initials on there stand for Gertrudis Barcero Cisneros. And she was a gambler in the 1800s, in the mid-1800s in New Mexico. Right after the battle of the Mexican-American War was her downfall of her place. So the story goes that she was actually born in about 1800 in Sonora, Mexico. And then after the Mexican Revolution, where they won their independence, her and her parents moved to Santa Fe and set up their businesses that they had there. She was a spiteful young lady as she grew up, and she did not want to get married until she found somebody that was not beneath her, because she was actually born up in a very prosperous family. She ends up marrying a guy by the name of Juan Cisneros. And he actually was a Don in Mexico. So that made her a Donna. And she used several aliases throughout her whole career as being a gambler and a prostitute and a madam. And she had a hotel, and she did every vice in the book as long as she could make money. Don't know what really ever happened to her husband. In 1841 was the last time that there was any known communications with him at all. Whether he left or died, no one knows. But the story went on, and they called her the Queen of Sin, because she used every trick in the book to try to get the gamblers to actually give her money. She was a very pretty lady. And so she used her beauty to do it. I'm going to show you a few things that we have. This is a particular roulette wheel. And so is this. They would bet on where the things landed. This one here would have a peg in here, and they would spin it, and hopefully it would land on a certain thing. These here, she used dice of all kinds. This is actually ivory. And the dice are little, small. She had all kinds of things that she actually used, but this one here is pretty neat. She would spin this thing, and she would tell the players, now the very first one that you actually see, we're going to bet on that. Now, it turned out to be 4. Are you going to bet that it's higher or lower? Well, they would put all of their bets in, and she would spin it again. And she would kind of monitor what the bets were, because if it went, see, it's 4 again. So she would have won. She would have won that. She said, don't give up. It's okay. So everybody decides they're going to bet different than what they did. Well, she would anticipate what they were going to do. If she wanted to change the odds in her favor, then she would just pull the stem to the other side, which made the weight different. And it was more in her favor. She didn't win all the time, because then it would be too obvious. These here are loaded dice. And she also had a thing in here. I got to find it. This here, one of the very only ones known to exist. But that's how they loaded the dice. Say they would put it on here, and then they would drill down into the one that they wanted to weight it off to, and they would put a little bit of lead in it, and then they'd fill it back up with black so it doesn't look like it was anything. These are very minutely different weights to different sides. So she didn't win all the time, but the odds were in her favor. If the sheriff came in and he decided that he knew she was cheating or something, he would take this away and said, when you leave town, you can take it with you. Well, she would have this on her lapel that had more dice in it, and she would go back to playing again. She was really shrewd. This here is some form of a game of playing mice, and you'd have to bet on whether or not you could get them in here. And this one here is where you could get the little balls in the holes, and can you imagine the drunker they got, the worse they got at that. These here are marked cards, and I'll tell you more about the marked cards here in a minute. But say she wanted to seduce one of her players into doing it. She would even have a ring, and this ring would have something in it that she could drop into their drink. So she was shrewd. She kept everything going like that. Okay, so now these here about the marked cards. You've seen the dealers in the TV shows in the Old West, they'd be wearing spectacles. These are spectacles that you put on and you can actually see the markings in the cards. And that's how she could see it. She could play the hand to where most of the time it would go in her direction. But she had such beauty that, and so deceitful. She would wear revealing outfits and stuff to where when she was shuffling cards to play Monty, the guys weren't looking at the cards to make sure of which one was it. They were looking at her. So she used every advantage she could. Okay, it comes down to the end of the day, and she had to pay up. She had several choices of paying up. One of them was that she would seduce them into services that she would render instead of that. But if they didn't do that, and they finally came down to the fact that they got to pay her, so then she would pull out her wallet, which was a gun. And whether or not she ever actually killed anybody is not known. But at least this was a way that she could control it. So she actually got very, very wealthy doing this. Until the Mexican-American War came about, the Americans actually used her to actually seduce the officers on the Mexican side to keep them occupied to where we could actually overcome them. And so she did. She lived a very short life. And in 1847, about the time the Mexican-American War, Mexican-American War was actually coming to an end, so was her life. She had been with too many people and caught a disease she couldn't get over, and she died at the age of 47. And this is her gambler's kit. Thank you.